I have a strange illness. Every morning I wake up, the previous day's memories are completely gone. My wife, Olivia, is the only person I trust when I open my eyes. She always tells me patiently. Your name is Ethan. You're 29, and you're my husband. I believed her without a shadow of a doubt. Until today, when I found a hidden diary in the corner of the study. On the very first page, written in my own handwriting, was a chilling warning. Never trust Olivia. Julian isn't her cousin. He's the man she's been in love with for years. You don't have amnesia. She has been drugging you. This is the 1001st time I've discovered the truth. From this moment on, I decided to play dumb. I'll keep acting in her little play. I opened my eyes in the morning, my mind completely blank. Are you awake? I turned my head and saw a woman in a silk bathrobe sitting on the edge of the bed. Who are you? The words slipped out of my mouth automatically. The woman smiled, gently brushing her hand over my forehead. I'm Olivia. Your wife. And you are Ethan, my husband. You've been sick, which is why you forget everything from the day before. She pointed to the picture frame on the nightstand. That's our wedding photo. In the photo, I was wearing a tuxedo, leaning close to her. But strangely, there was a noticeable crease along the edge of the photo. She took my hand, her fingertips warm. Ethan, I'm the only one you can trust. I nodded, accepting this reality. Olivia helped me get out of bed, laid out my clothes, and even meticulously adjusted my collar. What do you want to do today? I looked at myself in the mirror. I don't know. I don't remember anything. Then just let me handle everything. Olivia wrapped her arms around me from behind, resting her cheek against my back. A family doctor is coming for a checkup this morning. In the afternoon, I'll take you for a walk in the garden. And tonight. Before she could finish, the doorbell rang. Olivia let go of me, her brow furrowing just for a split second. That must be Dr. Julian. I followed her downstairs. A man in a white lab coat was standing in the living room. When he turned around and saw Olivia, his eyes lit up instantly. Olivia. How is Ethan doing today? Olivia walked naturally to Julian's side and took his medical bag. Their fingers brushed against each other as they made the handoff. Neither of them pulled away. Julian looked at me, a quick, calculating look flashing deep in his eyes. Ethan, let's test your memory baseline today. For the last question of the test, he pointed at Olivia. Who is she? My wife. Julian's pen paused on the clipboard, and the corners of his mouth curled up. The basic cognitive function is still there. But Olivia, I still suggest we increase the dosage. He began packing up his equipment. As he stood up, his fingers casually brushed against the back of Olivia's hand. I sat quietly on the sofa. Through the window, I saw Julian lean close to her ear outside the front door, whispering something. When she closed the door and walked back in, her face immediately returned to that sweet, gentle expression. Ethan, what would you like for lunch? I stared directly into her eyes. What did he whisper to you outside? Olivia froze for a moment. Then, a sharp, testing look flashed in her eyes. Why do you ask? I looked down, my finger tapping the armrest of the sofa absent-mindedly. He comes here every day. Were we very close in the past? Dr. Julian is just doing his job. Olivia wrapped her arm around my shoulder. The faint scent of cedarwood on her was exactly the same as the scent on Julian. Ethan, you have to remember. In this world, I am the only one who truly cares about you. Don't believe a word anyone else says. I nodded silently, saying nothing more. But deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. In the afternoon, Olivia left for the office. I sat alone in the backyard, soaking in the sun. Maria, the maid, brought over some fresh fruit. She looked at me, hesitating to speak. Mr. Ethan, do you really not remember anything? I shook my head blankly. Olivia says I'm sick. Her lips parted slightly, but in the end, she just sighed. Then just listen to Mrs. Olivia. She's doing it for your own good. As she turned to leave, I heard her mumble under her breath. So tragic, he can't even protect the inheritance his parents left him. I was about to call her back and ask what she meant. Just then, the sound of a car engine echoed from the driveway. Julian came in with his medical bag, a look of apology on his face. Sorry about this, Ethan. I forgot to give you your injection this morning. I just realized and rushed right back. As he spoke, he pulled out a syringe. This is a new neuronutritional drug. Olivia agreed to start you on it today. I instinctively shrank back. But he grabbed my arm with surprising force, pinning me down. Ethan, this is for your own good. I struggled slightly, and he immediately frowned. Stop moving. The needle pierced my skin. Before long, a heavy, dark sleep washed over me. I had a terrifying nightmare. In the dream, I was standing on the edge of a steep cliff. Olivia and Julian were holding each other, watching me. Ethan, just jump. You'll finally be free if you jump. I didn't want to. I wanted to run away. But Olivia blocked my path, pushing me step by step to the very edge. Ethan, once you're dead, all the company's shares will be mine. With that, she gave me a violent push. Ah! I screamed and woke up, but there was no one in the room. Through the glass of the backyard conservatory, I saw the two of them talking. I shook my heavy head, walked out, and suddenly spoke up. Olivia, are we really married? Their conversation cut off instantly. Olivia turned around, and for a split second, her eyes looked incredibly terrifying. She walked toward me, step by step. Why would you ask that? I was intimidated by her cold gaze, my back tensing up. I just think it's weird. Why do we only have one wedding photo? Why isn't there a single trace of my past in this house? She grabbed my hand so hard I felt my bones ache. Because you are sick, Ethan. When you have your episodes, you destroy things. You tear up photos, smash furniture. To protect you, and to protect our memories, I hid everything away. Don't you trust me? She looked at me, a look of deep hurt in her eyes. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have doubted you. Olivia's face softened, and she pulled me into a hug. It's okay. I know you're sick. I'll stay by your side until you're completely cured. I didn't pull away, but I didn't hug her back either. Over her shoulder, my gaze locked onto Julian, who was still standing nearby. Maybe it was because of the drug, but I fell asleep incredibly early that night. At 2 a.m., I woke up feeling extremely thirsty. I got out of bed and crept down to the kitchen in the dark. While pouring a glass of water, I noticed the lights in the conservatory were still on. As if possessed, I walked over. Through the glass, I saw Julian sitting on a wicker chair in a bathrobe. Olivia stood behind him, bending over to massage his shoulders. Was the dosage today too high? He actually started questioning things, her voice drifted out. Julian tilted his head back, resting it against her stomach. It's normal for him to doubt. That drug damages memory. Over time, it makes people paranoid, even delusional. He reached up and grabbed Olivia's wrist. Olivia, are you getting soft-hearted? No. She smiled, her expression colder and more indifferent than I had ever seen. He deserves this. If his family hadn't forced me into this marriage back then, we would have been together long ago. Julian chuckled. Just hang in there for 3 more months. His cognitive functions will be permanently damaged. By then, he really will be a vegetable. No one will ever be able to prove a thing. Olivia let out a cold laugh. Yes. And then, all of his parents' wealth will belong to me. I stood there frozen in the darkness. Suddenly, shattered fragments of memory rushed back into my brain. Olivia crushing pills into my milk. Julian holding a syringe, smiling warmly while saying, "This is for your own good." And the past version of me, frantically writing in a diary, "Do not trust them." I really did write a diary. I really did discover the truth. It's just that every morning I woke up, I forgot it all over again. Inside the conservatory, Julian stood up and wrapped his arms around Olivia's waist. He rested his head on her shoulder. Playing your cousin all these years has been so exhausting. Olivia gently patted his back. Just bear with it a little longer. The transfer of the family trust is almost complete. You approached him on purpose back then just for his parents' inheritance, didn't you? Why else would I? Olivia laughed, her voice dripping with mockery. Who could actually love an idiot who gets fooled every single day? I clenched my fists, wanting to run. But my foot stepped on a dry twig on the ground. Snap. The lights in the conservatory went out instantly. I ran back to the bedroom as fast as I could. I lay in bed, my heart hammering so hard it felt like it would burst out of my chest. The bedroom door creaked open. Olivia stood in the doorway, keeping the lights off. She walked over and put her hand on my forehead. Ethan, where did you just go? I forced myself to sound like I had just been woken up, my voice deep and groggy. What? I've been sleeping this whole time. She didn't say anything. Her fingers slid from my forehead down to my neck, stopping right on a faint bruise, pressing down gently. The pain made my muscles tense up. Did you have a nightmare? You're sweating a lot. I clenched my teeth, saying nothing. Olivia leaned down, whispering right into my ear. Ethan, you have to remember. You can go anywhere in this house, except the conservatory in the backyard. It's too damp there. It's bad for your illness. I nodded, making no sound. She smiled with satisfaction and tucked the blanket around me. Go to sleep. Tomorrow morning, everything will be fine. She walked out, leaving the door slightly ajar. I heard her whisper to Julian in the hallway. He might have noticed something. We need to move the plan forward. Only when the hallway went completely silent did I dare to open my eyes. Olivia had said that the things I destroyed during my episodes were kept in the study. And I remembered where she hid the key. I slipped out of bed barefoot and crept into the study. Opening the door, a musty smell hit my nose. Torn photos, smashed ornaments, and half-shredded books were all piled in the corner. I looked at the very bottom shelf of the bookcase. The thickness of one particular book looked wrong. I pulled it out and opened it. The inside of the book had been completely hollowed out. Hidden inside was a leather notebook. I flipped to the first page. It was my handwriting. March 15th, Olivia gave me a new pill today. I pretended to swallow it but spat it down the toilet. When Julian came to check on me, I lied and said my head hurt. The excitement in his eyes was sickening. May 20th. Our anniversary. Olivia gave me a tie clip. Tonight, I found a bank transfer record to Julian on her phone. What a joke. I kept flipping through the pages. The diary detailed every single time, date, and location of their secret hookups. On the very last page, there was a single line written in bold red marker. Ethan, run. They are going to kill you. My hands began to shake violently. Thud. The sound of the front door opening echoed from downstairs. I frantically shoved the diary back into the hollow book. I had just made it back to bed and lay down when my bedroom door was kicked open. Olivia stood at the door. She flicked the light switch. In her hand was a syringe, the needle dripping with a clear liquid. She smiled and walked toward me. Ethan, you went to the study just now, didn't you? I clenched my jaw, the veins on my forehead bulging. I checked the lock on the study door. There are fresh scratches on it. Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, her hand brushing over my face. Why can't you just be obedient? I desperately fought to suppress my rising panic. Olivia, I swear I didn't. I just went to the bathroom. Stop acting. She violently whipped the blanket off me. She grabbed my arm and dragged me to the edge of the bed. The mud on your bare feet hasn't even been wiped off. There are footprints on the study floor. My body went completely rigid. I couldn't find my voice. Olivia raised the syringe. She pushed the plunger slightly, squirting a bit of liquid from the needle. I wanted to let you live for 3 more months, but you just had to be difficult. She smiled. Let's end this tonight. The moment the needle touched my skin, I violently thrashed and broke free. Olivia didn't expect me to have the strength to fight back. She lost her balance, falling backward, and the syringe flew out of her hand. I rolled off the bed and dashed toward the door. But before I could take 2 steps, she grabbed me by the collar from behind. Did you really think you could escape? She dragged me back. She threw me violently onto the bed, pinning my legs down with her knees. The pain made my vision blur, but I gritted my teeth and screamed. Olivia. If you kill me, the police will find out. The police? She looked at me with pure disdain. You have severe amnesia. Everyone knows that. You forget everything every day, and you hurt yourself during your episodes. Tonight, you had a breakdown and accidentally injected yourself with a lethal dose of your own medication. What does that have to do with me? She leaned down, her face inches from mine. Julian will back up my story. He'll tell them your condition had already deteriorated beyond control. Do you really think anyone will suspect me? Olivia let go of my collar. She stood up to pick up the spare syringe from the floor. That was my 1-second window. I reached under my pillow and pulled out the phone I had hidden there earlier. The screen was bright. A call was in progress. The number dialed was 911. I held up the phone, my voice trembling but loud. Olivia, you've been talking for 3 minutes. The operator heard every single word. She froze. Her face turned instantly pale. Suddenly, loud, frantic banging echoed from the front door. Police. Open up. Olivia looked at me, a cold, mocking laugh escaping her lips. Ethan, when did you get your memory back? I didn't answer. I just clutched the phone and screamed toward the door. Help. In here. The bedroom door was kicked open. 2 uniformed police officers rushed in, followed by an officer holding a body cam. Olivia stepped back. A polite, sweet smile instantly returned to her face. Officers, this is all a misunderstanding. My husband is very sick. He's having a manic episode right now. The lead officer cut her off, raising his hand. Ma'am, we have your entire confession recorded on the line. Put your hands behind your back. Olivia's smile froze. She turned to look at me, her lips curling into a venomous smirk. The officers handcuffed her and started wheeling her out. As she passed by me, she suddenly stopped. She leaned in, whispering in a voice only I could hear. Ethan, do you really think this is over? Don't forget, Julian is still out there. I looked up sharply. At the far end of the hallway, Julian was standing in the shadows. He was holding a surgical scalpel. He smiled at me, then vanished down the stairs. The officers rushed after him. But all I heard from downstairs was the sound of hurried footsteps, and then, total silence. I gripped the edge of the bed to stand up, my chest heaving. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number appeared on the screen. It was just one line. Ethan, we're not done yet. The flashing blue and red strobe lights of the patrol cars sliced through the heavy velvet curtains of my bedroom, painting the walls in rhythmic, jarring strokes of crimson and cobalt. Downstairs, the frantic shouting of the officers slowly dissolved into the heavy, thudding silence of an empty house. They had taken her. Olivia, my wife, or the woman who had worn her face like a Tailored mask for years, was gone, her wrists bound in cold steel. But her parting whisper clung to the damp air of the room like toxic vapor. Ethan, do you really think this is over? Don't forget, Julian is still out there. My knees buckled. I slumped against the edge of the mattress, my chest heaving, as if the oxygen in the room had turned to lead. My fingers, still trembling violently, clutched the cheap plastic of the burner phone I had used to dial 911. The screen was cracked, a thin spiderweb of green light cutting across the call log screen. Julian. He had slipped past the police. He was somewhere in the shadows of this sprawling, unfamiliar estate, a house I had lived in for years, yet couldn't remember for more than 24 hours at a time. Mr. Vance? I jerked my head up. A young, burly officer with a thick mustache stood in the doorway, his hand resting cautiously on his holster. His eyes carried that exhausting mixture of pity and confusion that people reserve for the broken. The paramedics are outside. We need to get you to the county hospital. You've been administered an unknown substance, and we need to clear your system. No, I gasped, the word tearing from my throat before I could think. No. Hospital. If I sleep. I choked on the realization. The drug Julian had injected into my arm hours ago, the new neuronutritional drug, was already working its way through my bloodstream. My eyelids felt impossibly heavy. The edges of my vision were fraying, turning into a grainy, gray static. If I fell asleep in a hospital bed, would wake up tomorrow morning with a clean slate. My mind would be a blank canvas, ready to be painted by whoever stood over my bed first. And if Julian bypassed hospital security, if he wore a white lab coat, smiled warmly, and told me he was my doctor, I would believe him. I would let him inject me again. I would let him sign my life away. Sir, you're in no condition to stay here, the officer said, taking a step forward. This is a crime scene now. We've got forensics coming to sweep the study and the conservatory. We have to secure you. The diary, I muttered, my hands scrambling across the bedsheets, searching for nothing. My thoughts were slipping away like water through clenched fingers. I need to write it down. Everything. Sir. Just give me 5 minutes. I roared, a sudden, desperate surge of adrenaline tearing through the chemical fog in my brain. I stood up, my balance entirely gone, and stumbled toward the desk in the corner of the bedroom. The officer didn't stop me, but he watched with a furrowed brow as I grabbed a thick, black permanent marker from the drawer. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely uncapping the pen. I pulled back the sleeve of my left arm. The skin was pale, mapped with faint blue veins, and the tiny, purple prick marks of dozens of previous injections. With frantic, jagged strokes, I began to write directly onto my skin. Olivia is an imposter. She is in jail. Julian is not a doctor. He is her lover. He has a scalpel. The diary is in the hollow book. Study. Bottom shelf. Do not trust the meds. Do not trust the smiles. The ink dragged against my skin, cold and wet. I wrote until my forearm was a mess of black scrawls, stretching up past my elbow. I looked like a madman, a canvas of paranoia. But it was the only raft I had to survive the coming flood of forgetfulness. Mr. Vance, we really must go, the officer said, his voice softer now, laced with a chilling realization of just how damaged I was. I stared at the black ink on my arm, memorizing the shape of the letters, praying to whatever cruel god presided over my broken brain that my eyes would land on these words the moment I opened them tomorrow. Okay, I whispered, the marker slipping from my hand and rolling across the hardwood floor. Take me. As the officers guided me down the stairs, the cold night air hit my face. The driveway was a circus of flashing lights, yellow crime scene tape fluttering in the wind like warning flags. I looked toward the dark tree line at the edge of the property. The pines stood tall and silent under the crescent moon. Deep in the woods, just beyond the reach of the police searchlights, I swore I saw a shadow move. A tall, thin figure in a dark coat, standing perfectly still, watching me get loaded into the back of the ambulance. Then, the gurney was pushed inside, the doors slammed shut, and the darkness finally claimed me. The morning did not begin with a voice. It began with the smell of bleach and the rhythmic, hollow beep, beep, beep of a heart monitor. I opened my eyes. The ceiling was made of white, perforated acoustic tiles. It wasn't the ceiling of my bedroom. The light was harsh, fluorescent, hurting the back of my eyes. Where? I started, but my throat was so dry the word died as a raspy click. I tried to sit up, but a sharp pain in my left hand anchored me down. And 4 drip. was taped to the back of my hand, a clear tube running up to a plastic bag of saline hanging on a metal pole. Who am I? The familiar, terrifying panic flared in my chest. It was the daily ritual. The cold, empty void where my identity should have been. I had no name. I had no history. I was a ghost occupying a body of clay. I looked around the room. A basic hospital room. A plastic chair, a small bedside table with a plastic pitcher of water, and a window showing a gray, rain-slicked city skyline. Then, my gaze drifted down to my left arm. My heart stopped. The pale skin of my forearm was covered in thick, jagged black writing. The ink was slightly faded, some of it smudged where it had rubbed against the hospital sheets, but the words were stark, terrifying, and undeniably written in my own hand. I held my arm up to my face, my eyes scanning the frantic scrawl. Olivia is an imposter. She is in jail. Julian is not a doctor. He is her lover. He has a scalpel. The diary is in the hollow book. Study. Bottom shelf. Do not trust the meds. Do not trust the smiles. Your name is Ethan Vance. My breath hitched. Ethan Vance. That was me. But the rest of the words, they read like a script from a psychological horror film. Olivia. Julian. A diary. A scalpel. Before I could process the rising dread, the heavy wooden door of the room swung open. A man walked in. He wore a crisp white lab coat over a light blue button-down shirt. He was tall, with neat, sandy hair and a pair of wire-rimmed glasses that caught the light. He carried a silver clipboard and a stethoscope draped around his neck. But what struck me instantly was his smile. It was incredibly warm. Gentle. The kind of smile designed to make a frightened patient feel safe. "Ah, Ethan," the man said, his voice a smooth, comforting baritone. "You're awake. I was worried the sedative we had to administer last night would keep you under for longer." I froze. My gaze darted from his face down to my arm, then back to his face. "Do not trust the smiles." Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. I tried to pull my left arm under the hospital blanket, hiding the black ink, but the movement was awkward and obvious. The man's eyes followed my arm, his smile faltering for a fraction of a second, a tiny, almost imperceptible twitch of his lips, before returning to its perfectly practiced curve. "I'm Dr. Julian," he said softly, stepping closer to the bed. "I've been managing your case for over a year now, Ethan. You had a very severe episode last night at your estate. You became highly delusional, threw your wife Olivia out of the house, and called the police in a state of manic paranoia." He sighed, shaking his head with a look of deep, professional sorrow. "It was heartbreaking. Olivia was devastated. The police had to take her to a local shelter for her own safety because you were threatening her with a kitchen knife. Do you remember any of this?" I stared at him. The narrative he was spinning was seamless. It was logical. If I had waking amnesia, of course I would be prone to paranoia. Of course I might hurt my loved ones. But my arm, my own hand had carved a different truth into my flesh. Julian is not a doctor. He is her lover. He has a scalpel. I don't remember, I whispered, keeping my face as blank as possible. I needed to play the role. The diary had said I had played dumb before. I had to do it again. My head, it feels like it's full of cotton. That's the residual effect of the medication, Julian said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small, silver penlight. "Let me just check your pupil." Response. As he leaned over me, the scent of his cologne drifted into my nostrils. It was a sharp, distinct scent. Cedarwood. A sudden, violent flash of memory hit my brain, not a full memory, but a sensory echo. A dark conservatory. The smell of cedarwood. A man's head resting against a woman's stomach. Just hang in there for 3 more months, by then, he really will be a vegetable. My heart rate spike was immediate. The monitor beside the bed began to beep. Rapidly, beep 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 beep. Julian noticed. He paused, his penlight hovering inches from my left eye. His gaze shifted from my eyes to the monitor, then slowly slid down to my arm under the blanket. "Your heart rate is remarkably high, Ethan," Julian said, his voice dropping an octave. The warmth in his tone had vanished, replaced by a cold, analytical sharpness. "And you're hiding your arm. Did you write something on yourself last night before the police brought you in?" "No," I lied, my voice cracking. I just feel cold." Ethan, we've known each other a long time, Julian said, taking a step closer. His body blocking the view of the door's small glass window. You can't hide things from me. The amnesia makes you do strange things. Sometimes, you write down lies because your brain is trying to fill the gaps with conspiracy theories. Let me see your arm. He reached out. His hand was large, his fingers long and pale. I shrank back against the pillows, pulling the four-line taut. Get away from me. Julian stopped. He looked at me for a long, silent moment. The mask of the caring physician had completely slipped now. Behind the wire-rimmed glasses, his eyes were dead, calculating, and predatory. You're a very difficult patient, Ethan, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Over the hum of the hospital ventilation. But it doesn't matter. The police believe me. The courts believe me. Olivia is already signing the conservatorship papers. By this afternoon, I will have full legal authority over your medical care. He reached into the pocket of his lab coat. When he withdrew his hand, he wasn't holding a syringe. He was holding a small, folding surgical scalpel. A simple slip of the pen, Julian murmured, flicking the blade open with a soft, metallic click. A manic patient attacks his doctor, and in the struggle, the patient's carotid artery is severed. A tragedy, really. But entirely expected given your deteriorating mental state. He took another step. The heart monitor was screaming now, a continuous, high-pitched panic. I had nowhere to go. I was pinned to the bed, the four-tube restricting my movement, my muscles weak from months of chemical sedation. But I had one thing Julian didn't expect. I had the rage of a man who had been erased 1,000 times, and was finally refusing to vanish. With a desperate, guttural scream, I grabbed the metal four-pole with my right hand and swung it with all the strength I had left. The heavy steel pole struck Julian squarely in the shoulder. He grunted, the impact throwing him off balance. The scalpel sliced through the air, missing my neck by inches, instead cutting a clean, deep line through the fabric of my hospital gown and scratching the skin of my shoulder. I didn't wait to see him recover. I ripped the four-needle out of my left hand, a sharp spike of pain shooting up my arm as blood began to well from the vein. I rolled off the opposite side of the bed, my bare feet hitting the cold linoleum floor. Guard! Julian roared, recovering his footing and lunging across the bed. The patient is having a violent episode. The door to the hospital room burst open. But it wasn't a police officer who entered. It was a burly man in a navy blue scrubs uniform, orderly, but with a hard, flat face that looked more like hired muscle than medical staff. I didn't think. I grabbed the heavy plastic pitcher of water from the bedside table and threw it directly into the orderly's face. The cold water blinded him. For a split second, his hands flying up to his eyes. I ducked beneath his outstretched arms and bolted into the hallway. The hospital corridor was a sterile, labyrinthine nightmare. White walls, gray floors, and doors that all looked identical. I ran barefoot, my blood dripping onto the floor behind me, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Stop him. He's dangerous. Julian's voice echoed down the hall. I turned a corner, my feet sliding on the polished floor. I saw a sign. Stairwell, exit. I threw myself against the heavy fire door, bursting into the concrete stairwell. The air here was cooler, smelling of dust and exhaust from the lower levels. I ran down the stairs, jumping 3 at a time, the concrete biting into the soles of my feet. Behind me, the door at the top of the stairs slammed open. Ethan. You can't run from this. Julian's voice drifted down, accompanied by the heavy, rhythmic thud of the orderly's boots. You don't even know where you are. You don't know who you are. His words were a physical blow. He was right. I didn't know the city. I didn't know if I had friends, family, or a single safe place to go. But I knew one thing. I knew the house. I knew the study. I knew the hollow book. I reached the ground floor. I pushed through the emergency exit, an alarm instantly triggering, a shrill, deafening wail that filled the alleyway outside. The cold morning rain hit me like a sheet of needles. The sky was a bruised, heavy gray. I was in a narrow alley behind a massive brick hospital complex. Steam rose from sewer grates, and the smell of wet garbage filled the air. I ran toward the street. The city was waking up. Yellow cabs splashed through puddles, and pedestrians in dark trench coats and umbrellas hurried along the sidewalks, their faces obscured. To them, I was a madman, a barefoot man in a bloody hospital gown, running wild in the rain. People shrank away from me as I burst onto the sidewalk. Hey! Watch it! A man yelled as I nearly collided with him. I looked frantically for a way out. I couldn't call a cab, I had no money, no phone, no shoes. Then, I saw a familiar face. Sitting in a silver sedan parked curbside, her windshield wipers scraping rhythmically, was Maria, the maid. My mind catalogued the scrawl on my arm, but then a deeper, instinctive memory kicked in. Maria. She looked at me, hesitating to speak. So tragic, he can't even protect the inheritance. She had tried to warn me. I bolted toward the passenger side of the car, yanked the door open, and threw myself inside. Maria gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Mr. Ethan. Oh my God, what happened to you? The news, they said you had a breakdown, that Mrs. Olivia was. Maria, drive, I pleaded, my voice cracking, my chest heaving. I pointed to the hospital exit behind us, where Julian and the orderly were just bursting through the doors, scanning the street. Drive. Please. They're going to kill me. She looked at my bloody hand, the frantic writing on my arm, and then at Julian, who had just spotted the silver sedan and was running toward us. For a second, she hesitated. The fear in her eyes was palpable. But then, she slammed her foot on the gas. The tires screeched, the sedan tearing away from the curb just as Julian reached the passenger window. Through the rain-speckled glass, I saw his face twist into a mask of pure, unadulterated fury before he vanished into the distance. Maria drove fast, weaving through the morning traffic of the city. The heater in. The car blasted warm air, but I couldn't stop shaking. Where are we going, Mr. Ethan? Maria asked, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. Her eyes kept darting to the rearview mirror, checking for pursuers. The house, I said, my teeth chattering. We have to go back to the estate. The estate? But the police, they've cordoned it off. And Dr. Julian knows. You'll go there. It's the first place he'll look. I have to get the diary, I insisted, holding up my left arm, pointing to the jagged writing. My past self, he left me a record. Every time I discovered the truth, I wrote it down. It's the only way I can prove what they did to me. If I don't get it, tomorrow morning I will wake up, and I will be at their mercy. Again. Maria looked at my arm. A tear slipped down her cheek. I'm so sorry, Mr. Ethan. I knew something was wrong. I saw Dr. Julian and Mrs. Olivia when they thought no one was looking. But I was scared. They threatened to fire me, to blackball me so I could never work again. I have a family to feed. I don't blame you, Maria, I said gently, trying to calm my own racing heart. But I need your help now. If we go to the house, is there a way in that doesn't involve the front gates? A way the police, or Julian, won't be watching? She nodded slowly. The old service entrance. It's a dirt road behind the estate. That leads to the servants' quarters and the greenhouse. It's overgrown, and the gate has been locked for years, but I have the key. Good. Take me there. As she drove, I kept staring at the writing on my arm. The ink was the only anchor tying me to reality. I realized with a sickening dread that the day was progressing. Hours were passing. Soon, the sun would set, and the inevitable clock of my mind would wind down to zero. I needed to find a permanent solution. I couldn't live the rest of my life writing on my skin like a chalkboard, desperately trying to reconstruct my existence every 12 hours. We reached the outskirts of the city. The concrete towers gave way to sprawling suburban estates, hidden behind massive stone walls and iron gates. This was the territory of the ultra-wealthy, and, apparently, the territory of my own forgotten prison. Maria turned the sedan onto a narrow, unpaved lane bordered by dense, overgrown woods. The branches of the wet pine trees scraped against the sides of the car like skeletal fingers. At the end of the lane stood a rusted iron gate, half choked by ivy. Maria killed the engine. This is as far as the car can go. We have to walk from here. She reached into her glove compartment and pulled out a heavy brass key. Then, she reached into her purse and handed me a spare set of clothes, a gray hooded sweatshirt and a pair of dark sweatpants. These belong to my son. They might be a bit small, but they're better than that gown. Thank you, Maria, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I quickly changed in the passenger seat, the warm cotton fabric a massive relief against my chilled, damp skin. I made sure to roll up the left sleeve of the sweatshirt, keeping the writing on my arm visible. It was my compass. We got out of the car. The rain had slowed to a miserable, freezing drizzle. Maria unlocked the rusted gate with a heavy, metallic groan. We slipped through, entering the rear grounds of the Vance estate. The estate felt different in the daylight. It was beautiful, but it was a cold, sterile beauty. The manicured lawns were vast, but they felt like a cemetery. We crept through the trees, keeping low, approaching the back of the conservatory, the glass structure where I had seen Olivia and Julian plotting the night before. Suddenly, Maria grabbed my arm, pulling me behind a massive oak tree. "Look," she whispered. Through the trees, we could see the front driveway of the mansion. A sleek black SUV was parked there. A man in a dark trench coat was standing near the front door, talking to a police officer who was guarding the crime scene tape. Even from this distance, I recognized the wire-rimmed glasses and the sharp, calculating posture. Julian. He was already there. He was using his authority as my personal doctor to gain access to the house, likely claiming he needed to retrieve medical records or medication for me. "He's going to find the diary," I whispered, panic rising like bile in my throat. "If he gets his hands on it, he'll burn it. And I'll be erased forever." "He doesn't know where it is," Maria whispered back. "Only you know. We have to get to the study before he does." "But how do we get inside?" "The front is guarded." Maria pointed to the glass conservatory. "There's a small cellar door beneath the greenhouse. It leads directly to the heating ducts and the basement stairs. The police won't be guarding it, and Dr. Julian doesn't know about it. It's only used by the maintenance staff." "Let's go," I said. We crawled through the wet grass, using the overgrown shrubbery of the garden as cover. The smell of damp earth and rotting leaves was suffocating. My bare feet, now protected only by thin socks Maria had given me, felt numb and frozen. We reached the brick foundation of the conservatory. Maria knelt down and pulled aside a thick clump of ivy, revealing a low, wooden storm door secured by a simple padlock. She quickly unlocked it, the chain clinking softly. "I'll stay here and keep watch," Maria whispered, her eyes wide with terror. "If I see anyone coming, I'll whistle like an owl 3 times. "Thank you, Maria. If I don't come out in 10 minutes, run. Don't look back." She nodded. I squeezed my body through the narrow opening, sliding down a short, concrete ramp into the pitch-black darkness of the cellar. The air here was thick with the smell of coal dust, rust, and old water. I stood up, my head brushing against low wooden rafters. I felt my way forward, my hands scraping against rough brick walls, until I found a set of narrow wooden stairs. I climbed them slowly, my heart thudding in my ears. At the top of the stairs, I pushed open a small, creaking wooden door. I found myself in the back hallway of the mansion, just off the kitchen. The house was dead silent, save for the ticking of a grandfather clock in the foyer. I crept down the hallway, keeping my back to the wall. I passed the kitchen, the space where I had poured a glass of water just hours ago, completely unaware of the horror unfolding around me. I reached the foyer. Through the grand stained glass windows of the front door, I could see the silhouette of the police officer still talking to Julian in the driveway. Their voices were muffled, but Julian's tone sounded urgent, pressuring. I didn't have much time. I ran up the grand staircase, my feet making no sound on the heavy carpet. I reached the second floor and bolted down the corridor to the study. The door was slightly ajar, the lock scratched and broken from my previous midnight intrusion. I slipped inside. The study smelled of old paper and leather. The piles of torn photos, smashed ornaments, and half-shredded books still lay in the corner, the tragic detritus of my manic episodes. I walked directly to the bookcase. My eyes scanned the shelves, my heart pounding. The bottom shelf. The thickness of one particular book. I knelt down. There it was. A massive, leather-bound volume of Shakespeare's plays. The spine was slightly warped. I pulled it out. It was incredibly light. I opened the cover. The pages had been meticulously hollowed out, leaving a neat, rectangular cavity. Inside sat the leather notebook. I pulled it out, my fingers tracing the worn leather. This was my soul. My memory. The only proof that I had existed for the last 3 years. I flipped it open. The pages were covered in my own handwriting, dated back months, years. June 12th, Olivia brought a new maid today. Maria. She looks at me with pity. I think she knows. August 14th. I found a vial of scopolamine in Julian's medical bag. It's a drug that obliterates free will and memory. They are erasing me, piece by piece. October 3rd, tonight, I realized the truth. The wedding photo is fake. The man in the tuxedo is not me. It's a digitally altered photo of Julian. My blood ran cold. I ran to the desk and picked up the framed wedding photo. I looked closely at the crease along the edge of the photo. Now, with a clear mind, I saw it. The seam was there. It wasn't my body in the Tuxedo. It was Julian's head cropped onto my body, or vice versa, hastily put together to satisfy a man who woke up every morning with no point of reference. My God, I whispered. Suddenly, a sharp, loud whistle echoed from the garden outside. 1, 2, 3. Maria. I froze. Then, the heavy wooden front door of the mansion downstairs groaned. Open. I'll only be a moment, officer. Julian's voice drifted up the stairs, smooth and confident. I just need to retrieve Mr. Vance's daily medication from his study. The hospital needs it to analyze his baseline. Footsteps began to ascend the stairs. Rhythmic. Unhurried. He was coming straight for the study. There was no way out. The study had only one door, and the windows looked down onto the stone terrace. 20 feet below. If I jumped, I would break my legs. I looked at the leather notebook in my hand. If Julian found me here with it, he would kill me. He had a scalpel, and he had the backing of a system that believed I was insane. I had to hide. I scanned the room. The massive mahogany desk had a deep knee well. I crawled underneath it, pulling my knees to my chest, squeezing myself into the dark recess. I pulled the heavy leather desk chair close, blocking the opening. I held my breath, clutching the diary to my chest like a shield. The footsteps stopped outside the study door. The door swung open. Through the gaps in the wicker back of the desk chair, I saw the polished leather shoes of Dr. Julian enter the room. He walked slowly, his steps deliberate. He didn't go to the medicine cabinet. He went straight to the bookcase. I heard the sound of books being pulled from shelves, thrown carelessly onto the floor. Where is it, Ethan? Julian muttered to himself, his voice dripping with frustration. I know you kept a record. You always do. You're stupid, stubborn. Brain always tries to remember. More books hit the floor. He was systematically destroying the library, looking for the hollow volume. My heart was beating so hard against my ribs I was terrified he would hear it. The air under the desk was hot, suffocating. Then, his shoes turned. He walked toward the desk. He stopped directly in front of the chair. I could see his hand, pale, fingers twitching, resting on the edge of the mahogany desk, just inches from my head. You're not at the hospital, are you, Ethan? Julian said softly, speaking to the empty room. The police think you ran into the city. But I know you. I know how your broken mind works. You always come back to the hive. He pulled open the top drawer of the desk. He rummaged through it, slamming it shut. You think you're clever, he continued, his voice rising, a manic edge bleeding into his calm demeanor. But you're just a ghost. A ghost I created. I can erase you again. I can do it 1,000 times. He kicked the desk chair aside. The light flooded into my hiding spot. I looked up. Julian was standing there, looking down at me under the desk. His face was contorted into a twisted, triumphant grin. In his right hand, the surgical scalpel gleamed in the dim light of the study. Found you, he whispered. He reached down, grabbing me by the collar of my sweatshirt, pulling me out from under the desk with surprising strength. I fought back, kicking, trying to shield the diary with my body. We crashed into the desk, sending pens, paperweights, and the framed wedding photo flying. Give me the book, Ethan. Julian roared, pinning me against the floor, his knee pressing hard into my chest, cutting off my air. No. I choked out, my hands locked around the leather notebook. He raised the scalpel, the blade hovering over my face. I don't need you alive to get the trust fund. A dead husband is just as convenient as an insane one. Olivia will inherit everything, and I will inherit Olivia. She doesn't love you, I gasped, trying to find any leverage, my fingers desperately clawing at the floor for a weapon. My hand brushed against something heavy and cold. The bronze picture frame. She loves the money, Julian sneered, his eyes wild. And so do I. Now, let go of the book. He brought the scalpel down. I didn't try to block the blade. Instead, with a final, desperate surge of strength, I swung the heavy bronze frame with my right hand, smashing it directly into the side of Julian's head. The glass of the frame shattered. Julian screamed, the blow tearing open a deep gash on his temple. Blood instantly erupted from the wound, blinding him. He lost his grip on my collar, falling backward, clutching his head. I scrambled to my feet, clutching the diary. Julian was on his knees, blood pouring down his face, his glasses hanging off one ear. He looked like a demon, his white coat stained with crimson. You bastard, he shrieked, blindly lunging for me, the scalpel swinging wild. I dodged his clumsy swipe and ran out of the study. I flew down the stairs, my heart screaming. Behind me, I heard Julian stumbling out of the study, roaring in pain and fury. "Officer! Help!" I screamed as I reached the foyer. But as I burst through the front doors of the mansion, I stopped dead in my tracks. The police cruiser was gone. The driveway was empty. The officer who had been guarding the house had been called away, or perhaps Julian had convinced him to leave, claiming the scene was secure. And standing at the end of the driveway, her face pale, her hands clasped in front of her, was Olivia. She wasn't in a jail cell. She stood there, wearing a pristine cream-colored coat, her hair perfectly styled, looking like the picture-perfect grieving wife. "Ethan," she said, her voice soft, trembling with a terrifyingly realistic sorrow. "Thank God you're safe." "The police, they released me." It was all a misunderstanding. A clerical error with the warrant. I took a step back, my back pressing against the cold stone of the mansion's entryway. "You're lying," I whispered, holding the diary tight against my chest. "I called 911. They heard your confession." "Did they?" Olivia smiled, a slow, chilling expression that didn't reach her eyes. "My lawyer is very expensive, Ethan. And your mental health records, well, they speak for themselves. A manic husband making wild accusations while having a violent episode. The police realized they had no actual evidence of a crime. Just the ramblings of a sick man." She took a step toward me. "But then Dr. Julian called me. He said you had escaped. He said you were dangerous." From behind me, the front doors of the mansion creaked open. Julian stumbled out into the damp afternoon air. He was holding a bloody towel to his temple, his clothes disheveled, his eyes fixed on me with a murderous intensity. "He has the diary, Olivia," Julian spat, his voice raspy. "He knows everything. We have to end this now." Olivia's eyes locked onto the leather notebook in my hands. The mask of the gentle wife vanished instantly, replaced by a cold, calculating greed. "Ethan, give me the book," she said, her voice dropping all pretense. "You can't win this. Look at you. You're barefoot, bleeding, and the whole world thinks you're insane. Even if you run, where will you go? Who will believe you?" I looked from Olivia to Julian. They had me cornered. The dirt road was too far. And Maria was just a maid, she couldn't protect me from them. But as I stared at Olivia, a strange, calm clarity washed over me. The drug was wearing off. The adrenaline had cleared my mind in a way I hadn't experienced in years. I looked down at the writing on my arm. Olivia is an imposter. She is in jail. No, she wasn't in jail. My past self had been wrong about that. He had assumed the police would keep her. But the law is a slow, clumsy beast, easily bought by the wealthy. But my past self had written something else. This is the 1001st time I've discovered the truth. 1001 times. For nearly 3 years, I had been waking up, discovering their betrayal, and losing it again. 1001 times I had suffered, cried, and feared for my life. I was tired of being a victim in their play. "You're right," I said softly, my voice steady. "No one will believe me." Olivia smiled, taking another step forward, her hand outstretched. "That's right, Ethan. Just give me the book. We can go back inside. We can make you comfortable." "But they will believe this," I said. I reached into the pocket of my sweatshirt, the sweatshirt Maria had given me. I pulled out the burner phone. The screen was still cracked, but the green light was still on. And the call was still active. But I hadn't called 911 this time. When I was under the desk, while Julian was searching the room, I had used the phone to call a different number, a speed dial number I had memorized from the diary's notes. The number of Detective Miller, the lead investigator who had arrested Olivia the night before. "Detective?" I spoke into the phone, holding it up. "Did you get all of that?" A voice, crisp and loud, crackled through the speaker of the phone. "We got it, Mr. Vance. We've been tracking your phone's GPS since you left the hospital. We're 30 seconds away." Olivia froze. Her face turned a sickly, translucent white. Julian let out a guttural roar and lunged at me. But before he could reach me, the sound of howling sirens shattered the silence of the estate. 3 police cruisers tore around the bend of the driveway, their tires churning up the gravel, their blue and red lights blinding in the gray afternoon. Julian stopped, his scalpel dropping from his hand, clattering onto the stone steps. Olivia fell to her knees, her hands flying to her head, her pristine coat staining with the wet dirt of the driveway. Officers threw open their doors, weapons drawn. "Police. Don't move. Put your hands where we can see them." 2 weeks later. The rain had finally stopped, replaced by the crisp, golden light of late autumn. I sat on a wooden bench in the park, watching the fallen leaves drift across the pond. I wore a warm woolen coat, comfortable shoes, and a simple silver watch on my wrist. The estate had been sold. The wealth my parents had left me was now safely secured in a blind trust, managed by a reputable court-appointed guardian who had no connection to Olivia or Julian. Olivia and Julian were in custody, facing charges of attempted murder, chemical poisoning, grand larceny, and conspiracy. The leather diary, containing 3 years of meticulous, dated evidence, had been accepted by the court as a definitive record of their crimes. They were never going to get out. I raised my left hand. The skin of my forearm was clean. The black ink was gone, washed away by soap, water, and time. But beneath the clean skin, I could still feel the phantom weight of the words. A shadow fell over my bench. I looked up. A woman was standing there, holding 2 cups of coffee. She had kind eyes, a warm smile, and carried a thick file folder under her arm. "Mind if I sit, Ethan?" she asked gently. "Of course, Dr. Eris," I said, smiling back. Dr. Eris was my new neurologist. She wasn't a friend of Olivia's. She was appointed by the state, a specialist in chemical-induced amnesia. She sat down, handing me a coffee. "How are we doing today? Any fog?" "No," I said, taking a sip of the warm brew. "The tests this morning." I remembered my name. I remembered what I had for breakfast. I even remembered the name of the officer who escorted me to the clinic. "The toxins are completely out of your system," Dr. Eris said, opening the file folder. "The damage Julian's drug caused was severe, but the brain is remarkably resilient. Without the daily doses, your neural pathways are reconstructing themselves. The amnesia, it's fading, Ethan. You're going to keep your memories." I looked out over the water. I should have felt a profound sense of relief. I should have celebrated the return of my mind, the victory over my captors. But deep down, in the quietest corners of my soul, a cold, dark truth lingered. I remembered everything now. I remembered the look on Olivia's face when she thought I was asleep. I remembered the cold sting of the needle. I remembered the sheer, terrifying isolation of waking up every morning in a world of strangers. Some memories are a gift. But some memories are a prison of their own. "That's wonderful news, doctor," I said softly, my voice carrying no triumph. Only a quiet, humble acceptance of the long road ahead. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small, black notebook, not the leather diary of my survival, but a new, clean one. I opened the first page. I took a pen and wrote a single line, not to warn myself of monsters, but to remind myself of the man I had fought so hard to become. "My name is Ethan Vance. I am free. And I will remember today